Welcome back to Better Than I Deserve. I can't believe it's been almost 6 months since I have had the opportunity to get down here and do some freeze drying in front of the camera. A lot of times it's been just a quick cycle here and there doing things, and then we had the opportunity to do some fun trips and even went on an adventure to Sitka, Alaska. If you ever have the opportunity to get up there and do something, whether it's just you, your family, friends, whatever, I definitely recommend it. It was beautiful and the fishing was phenomenal for us this time. And as I always say when we go on trips like this, it seems like they are fishing trips disguised as vacations, but it always does turn out to be a pretty awesome and memorable experience. So we were gone for quite some time, and we actually turned off our freeze dryer for that. That is a recommended thing when you're using a freeze dryer, if there's going to be any lengthy amount of time that you plan on not using it. So that is the first time that we have openly turned off our machine by choice. We have had some power outages that have caused, the unit to go off and of course come back on once the power is restored. But we are back down here today getting into the swing of things after we have been back for about a month now, and we are doing a simple cycle today, but one that I just wanted to get in front of the camera and say hello. We are still here, I promise, and definitely look forward to sharing other things that we will be doing this year. And not that there seems to be a lot left, it's already half gone, but today we will be turning back on our unit and doing 2 items. Now, it's not very many, but we have had a prolific amount of berries, and not a berry that we've done before, one that we actually got to pick at a local farm, a black raspberry. Delicious, will stain your fingers like crazy, and it's been a little bit since they've been in the freezer, so I'm no longer looking blue. But we will also be putting pineapple in there. We've had a ton of fruit come through us, and we have been trying our best to eat it, but the pineapple was just not going quick enough. So we will be throwing that in with our black raspberries today for our first cycle back after kind of culminating our family vacations for a little bit. But I look forward to hopefully getting back to a little bit more regular filming to share the things that we have going on for the remainder of what's left for the year. So we'll move over to the freeze dryer, turn it on, get it cool down, and put our items in to start our what seems like a first cycle in such a long time to share with all of you. I'm down here by the oil pump in the back of the freeze dryer. They are both off, and I will be turning them back on to make sure that everything starts up as it should. Everything looks like it's loading up as it should. The screen has come on, a fantastic sign, and at this point there's not going to be any sound or action until we actually begin the process. So I'll go ahead and close the door and press start on the screen. Now, whether it's because we had the freeze dryer and the vacuum oil pump off at the same time, it did want me to reselect which kind of pump we had. Once I did that, I pressed save, and it has begun its cool down. So now I'll go get our food to show you what it looks like before starting the cycle today. The freeze dryer is cooling nicely. Always something nice to see that it's working after being off for such a long time. And I have our trays down here, and I noticed that Brad snuck on some raspberries onto 2 of our trays. So not only will we be doing black raspberries, but we have regular red raspberries going in. So we have 2 trays that look pretty much just like this. And as usual, the raspberries are always delicious, and it's just kind of funny to see the size difference between them. The raspberries are huge compared to the black raspberries, but they have tons of flavor, and I look forward to having them kind of in stack form without them staining everything that you touch. So we have 2 trays that look like that. We have 1 tray that is all black raspberries, nothing too crazy there. And our final tray is our pineapple. Now, we have done pineapple several times now, and I think I've grown to like this size. We've done rings, we've done chunks, and this is more like a tidbit size cut, just making it as thin as I can so it's pretty uniform and it freeze dries consistently. Not to say that we haven't had problems with that in the past, but I feel like this size is really good for the maximum use of pineapple. It's easy to crush into a powder when they're smaller pieces. Obviously, when it comes to wanting to snack on them, it's easier instead of trying to bite into a piece and it kind of like crumbles everywhere. The whole piece could go into your mouth. Easy to travel. We did the rings once, and those were pretty big, but I feel like this is probably the best method for us for pineapple, especially like I said, if you wanted to do it into a powder, you could add it to puddings or cakes, cupcakes, baked goods, of course, is the only thing that's coming to my mind right now, but definitely good. Or if you're wanting to do any like Asian inspired like pineapple dishes, like Hawaiian, Polynesian cooking, that would be fabulous too. So the freeze dryer has cooled down about 15 degrees, so that's fantastic, and we are at our 15-minute cool down time, so that means we can get all of this put into the freeze dryer and continue on. As usual, it is a great reminder on the screen. It tells you to load your trays now, that it is done with the cool down, and when you are completed with that and you close the door, we will then be closing the drain valve for the unit to pressurize and start its whole process. The other note that it gives on here is to not mix frozen and non-frozen food. As usual, I'm doing all pre-frozen items here since we have a freezer upstairs and it's always running. It makes the most sense to go ahead and do that, and it takes a lot of time off of the freeze dryer process to go ahead and put it in like that. So here we go. On to closing our drain valve, and now we can press continue. We have all of our trays in and our cycle is started. I am a little concerned there might be a problem with our vacuum pump. I'm going to give it a little bit of time before I assume the worst, and I might have Brad come down and do a little checkaroni on it because I'm not really hearing or seeing a lot of action. Now obviously if it takes a little bit of time to do anything, but we are going to watch and see what happens. So you might be getting a little check back in here with some troubleshooting, but we'll find out. Anyways, as always, I do want to thank you for watching. If you're a returning subscriber, that is fantastic, awesome, and I'm sorry that it took me so long to put something else out. If you're new here, consider subscribing, and I know that I'll say it at the end of the video again, but it's been a little bit and I'm kind of off my normal routine, but I want to put out, if you have suggestions of things that you'd like to see us freeze dry, let us know. We don't really do candy, sorry, but if you are interested in any other food safe things that are okay to put in the freeze dryer that we haven't done already, let me know, and other ideas that you might have for recipes of using things, I would love to hear about those as well. But for now, hoping that there's no other issues, we will let the freeze dryer do its thing, and I will look forward to seeing you back when we take everything out and check and see that it's done. Amazingly, it's the next day. I am so happy to report that we did not have any troubleshooting issues. I'm sure I was just nervous since it had been so long since we turned our unit off, approximately a little over a month, but I came down after our cycle had started about 2 hours after, I think, and it was already in the drying stage at that point, and the vacuum pump was running. Everything looked good. I had additional eyes come down to help check and see that everything was running as it should, so I felt confident to just walk away from that point and let it go overnight. And it's the next day. The screen says it has ran approximately 20 hours and 20 minutes, and all we need to do now is release the pressure, get our food out, and make sure it's dry. So if that's the case, we'll be able to start packaging. So we'll move over to the freeze dryer and start that process. Good amount of pressure in there. Here is our first tray coming out with our black raspberries and a few of our regular raspberries. I'm giving everything a quick touch just to see and make sure that everything is dry at this point, and it's feeling good so far. Always love to see that. Our beautiful pineapple, and it feels nice and crispy. Very, very good. Glad to see that we haven't quite lost our touch in doing this process, but again, like I said, having it in these smaller pieces is it's a good option. I feel confident. Our first tray here is completely good to go. Our next tray that we'll look at is the one completely of black raspberries. They smell so good. Oh my gosh. It smells like a fresh baked pie. I am surprised of just how good it smells. And of course, at this point, what's my favorite thing to do is to try some of it. I didn't try any of the pineapple. We've done that so many times. And I wanted to have a clean palate, a cleansed palate, to make sure that I can take on all of this yumminess, I'm hoping. Let's just get a couple to go. Really good. I'm still kind of working through it. Obviously, as anybody knows who's had any type of berry like this, there's a lot of seeds, and it's not to say that it takes away from the experience. I mean, obviously, if you're eating like mounds of them, it would be like just a mouthful of seeds, because you don't have any of that juice to help navigate the seed to be consumed. So we do have a little bit of sticking in the teeth with seeds, but the flavor is amazing. It is such a pop of black raspberry. It's so good. So this tray also feels nice and dry. I'm feeling nothing cold, which is normally your number one thing of if something was not completed, that it is going to feel chilled, and the trays were warmed when I got them out. So raspberries, as usual, feel really good, crisp, extra crispy, even almost lighter than these, and they're so much smaller. So let's try raspberry, because I think, like I've said in the past, these are my favorite thing to freeze dry, and I like them better like this than fresh. So it almost tasted like so sweet, like grape jelly. I have not had that flavor with a raspberry before, but so good. Everything feels really good again, and the parchment paper was a fantastic option. I don't know if you can tell in here as I move some of these, you can see the staining on there. It's not terrible. I'm actually pretty pleased, and of course that has to do with the fact of pre-freezing them and getting them into the freeze dryer as quickly as possible, because as they would defrost, then they would start to juice. So that feels good. We'll move on to our next tray. Our next and last tray is essentially a repeat of our previous one with the black raspberries and a few regular raspberries, and everything looks to be perfect. I am just so excited to see this, and really considering it a win. After having it off and having that really long extended break, I am happy to report. So I'm going to go ahead and turn the freeze dryer off and select no defrost and crack our door for air circulation. But again, these berries were picked by us at a local farm, and that was fantastic. I used to do the same thing when I was younger. We did field trips with school, and I went with my grandparents and my parents at different points. So that was pretty amazing to get to share that with Filson and kind of come full circle. But these have turned out fantastic. We'll go ahead and move on to packaging, which should be pretty quick. I've got everything situated to begin our packaging. We're going to start off with our pineapple tray first. It's going to go for long-term storage, and I have some mylar bags over here. We'll use a small one for this, As usual, we'd like to label before you put your food in because it's much easier that way. And I have another mylar bag for our black raspberries and a glass jar for our upstairs storage for what we're going to consume immediately, as I love to put everything in there to make it easily accessible. So the small bag size should work pretty well for this because there's not a ton of pineapple. I would like to try to figure out an easy way to funnel everything in. Let's see if I'll finally figure out how to do it. Not working so far. I'm bound and determined to make this work without handling everything too much. The nice part about having the parchment paper go through the freeze dryer is it makes it a little bit more rigid and gives it some extra support. So let's try this way. We did it! Alright, our first bag loaded up with our yum food items, so we'll move on to our next tray. Our next tray, we'll move on to the one that's all black raspberries, and I have the larger bag for this because I want to make sure it's got ample space so it doesn't get crushed with the tightness of the bag, and we obviously have way more black raspberries than anything else that we freeze dried today. So we'll start labeling that. We'll try our handy dandy way again, see if that works. There's a little bit more of these than the pineapple though, so we'll see. Okay, we're up. Oh, we had one casualty on the ground. Got that first part in, we'll move on to our next tray. On here, since we have our raspberries and black raspberries, I'm also going to move on to our glass jar. It's, I'm sure, too big, and I don't plan on keeping this completely full to package everything up. It's more like the first thing I grab. So we'll put the raspberries in here, gently of course. Set that aside. We have our funnel method, trying it again. Into our bag. Worked like a charm, and our bag is getting pretty full fast. I don't want to fill it up too much, even though we have a lot of space, like I said, because it'll essentially just crush everything in there. I'll put this one away and move on to our last tray. Get our jar back over, put our raspberries in. Now that we have our raspberries off and put in the jar, I'll top off our bag for our black raspberries and put some into our jar for upstairs. And a very good amount in there. So the bag's approximately filled to right here, right now. So I am happy with that. And we'll put the other amount into our jar here. And the ones that escaped us onto the tray. We have our jar nice and tight on there for us to enjoy these here soon. And I went ahead and got our impulse sealer down to seal our mylar bags up. I have adjusted it to the 4 to 5 range because we're going to get into our oxygen absorber bag, put one of those in each of our mylar bags, and reseal that as quickly as possible. It had a fantastic seal on it, so I had to do a little maneuvering here. I'm going to let that cool and just make sure that it is nice and sealed and set it aside for now. We have our 2 oxygen absorbers. One goes in our pineapple and the other in our black raspberries. And assuming that our oxygen absorber bag is fine, we're going to go ahead and move this to like the 7-8 range to seal our mylar bags up now. And I'm always a stickler for making sure I do this multiple times, so it has generally multiple areas of making sure that air does not get into it. You're keeping it for a long time possibly, and air is going to destroy the work that you've done if not. So there is a notch on these bags, and I like to go above and below that notch to ensure that it's done. And it looks really good, nice and crimped and solid all the way across. And we'll put this aside, move on to our next one. And it looks good. That quickly, we are now done with packaging, and it went pretty smoothly in my opinion. So I'll set these up behind me and we'll clean up and go ahead and make sure that our oxygen absorber bag is sealed up. That feels good. We'll get that packaged up into our other bag here. Our video has come to a close, and a very successful one, if I might say so. Of course, everything turned out, and that's all you could ask for. We were able to package some long-term shelf storage mylar bags for whenever we might need them, you never know. And of course, a small amount for upstairs for the boys to try. I know they're going to love them just like I did. So that is a very successful outcome indeed. But I am very happy that I got to get back down here and turn on the freeze dryer and kind of show that experience after it had sat for a while off and everything ended up going smoothly. I'm still very, very happy about that. And of course, what I would like to do is get a little bit more consistent with sharing what we're doing, but it's getting a little busy for us, and I hope to share as much as I can as we're going through all of the things we're doing. But in the meantime, if you like what you're seeing and the content that we're sharing, please consider subscribing if you haven't yet, and you'll be notified when future videos are set to premiere or post. But up until then, we hope you're doing well and you're having a great day, and we look forward to seeing you in the next video. Bye!